Hello and welcome back to the game room. You know what I love? Games. You know what I love talking about? Video games. But it seems like a lot of people these days who talk about games don't like them. And certainly don't like the people who play them. Well, that's not me, and that's not the 1,509 of you beautiful people here checking this video out. Now, for this idea, after I did last week's video talking about expensive PS1 games, I kind of had an idea about what would it be like starting from scratch essentially here in 2023 if I was new to collecting or if I wanted to play these old games on the original hardware but on an HDTV. So I thought, why not do a little bit of a buyer's guide from my perspective. Now bear in mind, these are not going to be for everyone. These are games that I like, that I think for the majority of players, if you pick up what I'm talking here, you'll have a good time experiencing the PS1 library. So if that sounds like an interesting topic to you, hit that subscribe button and let's check out the video.
There's a lot of games out there, some of which you've never even heard of. That's where I come in. My name's Luke. I've been playing games since the age of 2, and I have no life. This is my game room.
So let me preface this with the fact that I'm going off on price charting values. I have gone through and done some tertiary eBay researching to even see if this is possible. And we're coming out, I mean, pricing's going to be all over the place, but basically I want to have a limit of about the cost of a new PS5. Essentially. So you can be looking at something from a few $100s to $500, which yes, is a lot of money, especially for an older system. But let's face it, this stuff's not getting cheaper. You didn't click on this video if you're one who just wants a retro Pi, or if you want a PlayStation Classic and mod it. So if you're interested in playing some old systems on a modern TV, let's check it out. So first things first, if you want to play some old PS1 games, you need a way to do it. And ironically, I'm recommending that you pick up a PS2. I know, right? I'm talking about playing original hardware on original hardware, and I'm telling you to get a PS2. Well, that's the way I did it most of my life once I got one. It's backwards compatible. So you not only are you playing PS1, but you have the option to play PS2. There's no discernible difference other than you lose half of that iconic startup screen because you get the PS2 startup screen. And you know, it's funny, looking into this, PS2 prices have gone up a lot. I remember I picked this one up for maybe $8. I got it at a thrift store. It has the modem thing too. But now they're like $70, something like that, which I don't believe. I think you do a little research, you can find some lots for $100 that has a bunch of games, or you can find one that's untested for around $40. Because you don't need any of the hookups, because we're going to get into that. Really, you just need a power cord. You know, but a lot of them, let's say it's 70. Let's say 70 for this and a controller, and that's really maybe a second controller. But this is the way that I recommend doing it, just because you'll see why. So yes, you need a PS2. So that's about $70 finding one of those, which is insane. I can't believe how much PS2 prices have gone up. Obviously, you need a controller. I like this one. Any of the DualShock controllers. It's another benefit of the PS2 is if the game on the PS1 is DualShock compatible, you can hit the button here and then use this as a controller, not have to worry about having a compatible controller for that. Another thing you're going to need is a old school PS1 memory card. Now this is very important. These are going to run you about $10, $15, $20, something like that. Make sure it's an official PlayStation one. You don't want to mess around with the third-party control or third-party memory cards, just because they can be easily corrupted or have problems. Though I will say I had the memory card brand that worked out surprisingly well, and you can find those for like $2, $5, $6. They're dirt cheap. I used one my entire time when it was current, but still, just to be safe, get a authentic PlayStation branded memory card. Now here is why I'm saying you don't need the hookups. This is why I want you to get a PS2. Get the HD Retrovision cables. You can get these on Amazon. They're about $30. It's compatible with a PS2 and a PS3, and it's component hookup. So if you don't get the next thing I'm going to tell you about, you will need a TV that has a component hookup. because not everyone does. That's the one with the green, blue, red hookups and has the separate ones for the audio. Night and day difference. I was playing my old PS1 through my old HDTV a few years ago with just regular composite hookups, and it was way too dark, didn't look that great. I used it on these. Just these alone is a big improvement for only $30 and can help you when you just pick up that PS2 that maybe doesn't have any hookups. You're going to have to pay $30 for that anyways. So you might as well do it that way. And a power cord, I think, is like $10. It's not too bad if you don't get one with a power cord. Now, here's the last investment here for just before we get to the games. And that is a Retro Tink. So this is the old original model of the Retro Tink 2X. They don't sell this one anymore. This one, I want to say when I got it was either $100 or $200. I think it was $100. Now this version of it, the Retro Tink 2X Pro, I think is $110. And then, of course, there's the Retro Tink 5X, which I'm using now, which I highly recommend, but that's $300. And that's getting a little bit too far above budget. Now, where do you find these? Because right now they're currently sold out on the site. Either wait for them to get back in stock or pick one up on eBay. Second Market, I think I found one for $110. Highly, highly recommended. This is the ultimate thing for putting it on your HD TV. And not only will this work for your PlayStation, but you can use this for any other composite or component hookup and put it on an HD TV. Just bear in mind it uses the ridiculous mini HDMI, not micro HDMI, or maybe I'm flipping that, I don't know. But you need a HDMI to the TV, and then you need this thing here. When you look at it, I'm like, that's not going to be big enough. That's not going to work. Oh, wait, no. Fits right in. So that I had that problem happen a couple of times. And there's settings. I mean, this is why they changed it, the settings. You hit the buttons in here. But night and day. I mean, when I did footage for a video where I talked about a game, just having this makes it look so much better. And once you do that, you can play these old games, these old PS1 games on an HD TV, blown up huge 65 inches, and it looks, I mean, it looks like what it's gonna look like, but I happen to like that. Okay, so with all of that investment, we're totaling around $200-ish. You know, you don't need the Retro Tink, you do, etc. You can find a deal. So that's what we're looking at. So $200 to get started. Now let's get to the games. So I want to start off with 10 games that I highly recommend. These were, ironically, all the games I'm recommending today were games I had as a kid. So it's almost like I'm recommending my childhood collection, which for the PS1, I was pretty damn happy with. And let's start off with the game series that made me buy the damn PS1 to begin with, which if you follow the channel, you know what I'm talking about, if I can find it. And that is Resident Evil. Now, why am I holding up Resident Evil 1 Director's Cut? Well, they're both about the same, so you can do Resident Evil 1 or Resident Evil 2. There are green label and black label variants. Now, here's the thing. Don't be afraid of getting the green label. The green label's fine. You know, it just looks a little bit different. Plays the same. If anything, the green label version is a patched version of the game, so you're going to have maybe more content or a less broken game or things of that nature. Now, for Resident Evil Director's Cut, the black label is about 28 loose, 49 complete. Green label is about 19 loose, about 30 complete. So the loose prices for the disc are going to be about the same, but the complete value is way different. And that's because weird collectors like me, for a long time, could not stand that green label messing up their shelf. I mean, that's why I have all the green labels on one side versus the black label. But I actually kind of like the green label. But you can save yourself a lot of money by just doing loose only. Once again, if you just want to play the game, how much money do you want to put into it? I mean, on average, you'll probably save yourself about $100 across everything I'm going to talk about if you just do loose. But then it doesn't look as fun on the shelf. So I'd say do the Director's Cut over Resident Evil 2, even though they're similar prices. I mean, they're very similar with both the green and the black, just because the voice acting is so terrible and funny.
Oh no! Are you all right?
Yes. I'm Chris Redfield.
Now, here's a small thing I didn't even know. I have a variant of Resident Evil Director's Cut that has a Resident Evil 2 demo, which, if you remember, the reason I got a PlayStation is I wanted to play Resident Evil 2, and likely the reason I bought this was to play that stupid demo. And I don't even remember that. That's how crazy this is. And apparently this makes this a more expensive version of the game, which, cool, all right, whatever. But yes, gotta have a Resident Evil, either 1 or 2. I'm going with 1, but you would be even. I could not fault if you get 2. They're both about the same price. So right there, start off with that. You gotta have yourself a Resident Evil. And then after that, the other game that I'm highly recommending is going to be Metal Gear Solid. So this comes in Black Label and Green Label variants as well. Loose price on that's about $25 for the Black Label, about $14 for the Green Label. So this one is cheaper if you do the loose. And then the complete is $48 for the Black Label. Loose for the Green Label is around $35. So not as big. I mean, it's still decent savings. So once again, if you're okay with the Green Label, go with the Green Label. Still the same playing game. And this is one of the best games, period, that I can think of. And Resident Evil series. It's so much fun. The cast of characters, the gameplay. People call this a stealth game. I'm going to disagree as much as it's more of just an... It is stealth, but you can go through it action-wise as well if you want. Because you don't really... I mean, I don't know. I don't remember it feeling stealth. There's other games that are stealth games that annoy me. I guess the stealth aspect in this didn't bother me because it's easy to get away and reset and then go back in. Because they don't follow you beyond rooms too much. But yeah, Metal Gear Solid, highly recommended. One of my favorite games on the system. One of my favorite games of all time. Something you need in your collection. So we're hitting a lot of the big heavy hitters here at the beginning. The next one we're going to go with is arguably my favorite game of all time, which used to be Link to the Past, but I think the older I get, the more I'm starting to think that Final Fantasy Tactics is taking that crown. Now, it's a Black Label variant, and it also has a Green Label variant. Because I'm a huge fan, I wanted to get the second version of it just for the hell of it. Now, Black Label of this game goes for about 14 loose, 21 14 loose, 21 complete. The Green Label is actually more expensive at 15 loose, 26 complete. I'll have to check that. I could have sworn the Black Label was more. Highly recommend this. One of the greatest tactical games ever made. We are still chasing the high of this. Soundtrack is amazing. I was playing this game, showing it to Jen when we were dating early on. It was the game I was playing before I picked up my first cat, Copper, the orange cat, who I love so much. And just everything about this game is incredible. It's got a wonderful job system. It's got so much content. You can have different dependencies. You can make the game harder. You can make it easier. There's secrets. If you're a fan of the Zodiacs, it's got a nice representation of that. And it even has some fan service with appearances of Cloud and Aerith if you're a fan of those games. So highly recommend Final Fantasy Tactics. Either Green or Black Label. And with these, I remember going and looking and seeing I could find deals. So even there, like, I found a deal for Resident Evil Director's Cut, $30. Metal Gear, $34. Final Fantasy Tactics, $24. All complete, all well worth it. Now let's move on to one that's not as high priced and high ticketed. And that is a game that I'm always talking up. And it's a two-player game, so if you do manage to score a second controller, which the controllers are about $15-ish, they're not too expensive, and that is Pong the Next Level. This is dirt cheap. This is like $5 by itself, $7 complete. You can definitely find it for a deal. This is a very, very surprisingly fun game. You think it's just Pong? There's like 30 different versions of Pong on this on different screens. If you're a fan of something like Windjammers, this is very much a game in that vein. And it's a lot of solid fun. I showed this to Jen a few years ago. She had a great time. Another fun two-player game would be, surprisingly enough, Frogger. Now, this is not a very good one-player game. Only recommend the two-player. I remember years ago I did a video where I was talking about fun games people didn't know about from the 90s, and I mentioned this, and I went through and I played some of it, and I'm like, man, this game is not as much fun as I remember. It's because I wasn't playing multiplayer. So really, another solid one. This has a black and a green label. They're both about the same. $5 loose, $10 complete. I got the green label one. I kind of like it for Frogger because of the green. And definitely something you should pick up. All right, now, obviously, as this is the PS1, you got to have some mainline Final Fantasy representation. So you can do 7, you can do 8, or you can do 9. I'm recommending going with the granddaddy, which is Final Fantasy VII. Now, this has Black Label and Green Label variants. Black Label gonna run you about 16 loose, 40 complete. Green Label is 18 loose, 28 complete. So once again, you get that savings on the green. Now, if you want, you can pick up either Final Fantasy 8 or 9. Those are gonna save you about $10 each across the board. I know some people recommend 9. I'm not a huge fan of 9. I mean, I have you could pick up a nuke version of 9 from Square Enix store a few years ago. They had a sale. So I want to say I got this for $2. But I mean, I don't know. I'm just not a huge fan of it. I have the black label version too. Same thing with Final Fantasy VIII. I mean, I got the green label. I don't even know when I picked this up. I think I got this in a lot or something. But yeah, I personally like 8 a lot. I don't like it more than 7, but I do like 8. But you can't go wrong with any of them. Need to have some Final Fantasy representation if you're buying a PS1 and playing it on the original method of doing it through PS2. Okay, now here's a game that if you're familiar with the Grand Theft Auto series, I to this day still say they owe that entire style to Driver. Now, Driver is one of those weird games where it created something, but then someone else took the ball and ran with it. So, and one of the reasons why I think a lot of people have bad memories of this game is that when you start it up, it requires you to go through a tutorial that is surprisingly difficult. It's the driver's license tutorial, which I forgot how hard this was. I think this might make a fun noob gamer challenge, because I remember renting it, and what would happen is if you couldn't get through the tutorial, you never even got to the actual game. I mean, luckily I think there was a free roaming mode where you could just drive around the city and just explore, but you couldn't do any of the missions. And if you know that Grand Theft Auto style of drive here, meet NPC, then get a new mission to drive here, that's basically what this was. But what made it so cool was a lot, especially back when this came out in the early 90s. I think this was 95, 90, I mean, this is 99. It was later, but still, 3D graphics were still very new, especially on consoles. And what made this so cool is the fact that you could have replays in this cinematic mode where you could see all these different angles and replay your escape from the cops. And one of the things I used to like to do a lot with Driver was get as many police on my tail as I could and then just drive around as long as I could, see how I could get the police to crash into each other, and just watch the replay through various different angles and just enjoy how cool everything looked, seeing these different angles in engine. I know games had a lot where you'd have a mode where you couldn't play in it, but you could watch it and it would look cool. I remember Shadows of the Empire had a similar thing like this called a cinematic mode, where you'd be playing and the camera would zoom out and do all these fun cinematic movements and make it impossible to play the damn thing. Now, price-wise, this game is still dirt cheap. 7 for the loose, 11 for the complete black label, and then green label is about a little less. I think it's 5 loose, 9 complete. And if you ever play the sequel is arguably better. It takes place, I think this one's in a San Francisco versus this one is in a New York type. And it is better, but I still think I might recommend the first one. Price-wise, this one's pretty much similar, though. I think it's maybe flipped where the black label and the green label are flipped, but other than that, basically the same. Okay, now moving on next, you gotta have some more fun multiplayer, and one of the best multiplayer games on the system, in my opinion, was a complete shock because it was based on Star Wars Episode 1, and I'm always talking about this. I will continue to, and that is Star Wars Episode 1 Jedi Power Battles. This was, if you like the Lord of the Rings Return of the King style game on GameCube era PS2, this is very much that. It's a beat 'em up with progression. You have different characters. You can play as all the different Jedis. You play as Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan. There's the ability to unlock Darth Maul even, and all the other Jedis from the Jedi Council that you never really meet. But it's just a solid game. Pretty much the best part about Star Wars Episode 1, in my opinion, was this game. And it's a green label version and a black label version. Of course, you got Mace Windu, too. You got to play as Samuel L. Jackson. Though I don't know if he had a purple lightsaber. They might have been before they made that decision. But it's about $9 loose, $18 complete for the black label, and then green label is about $6 loose, $11 complete. So once again, green label savings. I'd probably say just get the dang green labels for all of these, and that way you have a nice uniform collection other than the ones that don't, which are far and few between. All right, and then I was a huge fan of GoldenEye, and I wanted some more of that first-person action. At the time, there wasn't any big World War II shooters until a little game called Medal of Honor came out, and this was such a good game when it came out. It had that style of GoldenEye where you had different missions throughout the levels. You could find secrets on each level. You could do like the realistic guns, the realistic sounds, shooting enemies. I mean, this is really the thing that popularized shooting Nazis right here. This was it. Now you can do this one, or you can do Medal of Honor Underground. They're about the same price. I'm gonna recommend the first Medal of Honor. I enjoy this more, even though I put in a lot of time in 2. It never really stuck with me. And price-wise, they're about the same. It's about $8 loose, $15 complete for a black label. Green label is about $5 loose, $10 complete. And Underground's pretty similar as well. So that right there, highly recommend. A lot of fun, especially if you enjoy first-person shooters. Now, it is janky as hell, don't get me wrong, but I like that. And lastly, with these 10 games I'm recommending is, you gotta have a fighting game. Tekken 3. Now, part of the reason why I'm recommending this is because this gives you the option to have a beat 'em up mode. It has the volleyball mode. There's tons of secrets. And it's a fun, not just a fun fighting game, but it's actually a decent game all around as far as that goes. It has a black label and a green label version. Black label is about 11 loose, 21 complete. Green label's 10 loose, 18 complete. Now, you can find deals. While I was searching through this, I found a deal for Metal Gear and Tekken 3. And I want to say it was like $45 buy it now, and they were both black label. And if the black label of Metal Gear Solid is supposed to be $48 buy it now, there you go. So I mean, like, a lot of these games are big sellers, so don't be afraid to look for deals. A lot of lots will salt the lot with these games because they're fun playing games. So those are 10 games definitely to pick out, but you know I gotta throw in some bonus games here. Now, if you were just stopping there at those collections, looking at it, you'd be paying about $280, or not $280, you'd be paying about, let's see, I tried to do professional here. Okay, so if you were just buying all those, you'd be looking around $230 for all the black labels complete. If you did green label, you're looking about $180 for all those complete. Now, if you want to add about another $100 worth of games to get the total price value close to that $500 mark, then I'm recommending adding these. So the first one we got is Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver. I know it came out on the Dreamcast, and some people say that version is better, but this is just a really solid action-adventure game with some puzzle elements. Kind of the progenitor of the God of War series, that kind of style. And what's nice is it was extremely violent for the time, too. I mean, that was a lot of fun. Taking people, spearing them, sucking their souls, and a decent story too that really nothing was ever done with. This is one of the first games that kind of ends on a cliffhanger, and even though there's sequels, I don't think they ever really addressed anything. Like, yeah, but still, solid game. There's a black label and a green label. Black label, 15 loose, 30 complete. Green label, 13 loose, 31 complete. So not much savings there. Now, surprisingly, I had some trouble finding these. Now, each one of these I went through and I tried to find existing deals where you could find readily buying this game. But the Twisted Metal series, finding cheap copies of 1 and 2 compared to what price charting says they are going for was very difficult. Now, I have Twisted Metal 3. At this point in the series, I thought it started to get lacking. I'd recommend picking up 1 or 2. So 1 or 2, I'm going to talk about 1, black label and green label. It claims that 1 is about 14 loose, 30 complete. Black label and green label is pretty much similar. And that's kind of the same for 2, versus 3 and 4 are about 10 loose, 20 complete, something like that. I recommend 1 or 2. 3 is still fun. But if you want a little bit of racing, action, combat, I don't have much racing representation here, if any. Driver's not really it, and this it really isn't it, but it's a deathmatch game. Solid, a lot of fun. There's secrets to it, and depending on which, I mean, Sweet Tooth was iconic. There's a reason why there's 5 of them on the PS1. Fortunately, the series kind of petered out because they made too many of them. It didn't seem like they came out that frequently, but I guess they did. Now, another game that you gotta have for the PS1 is a Tomb Raider. Now, I'm not recommending Tomb Raider 3. That's just the one I have. That's the one I had. I rented the first 2 and beat both of them. But this was, I don't know why I bought this one. There's 5 Tomb Raiders on the PS1. I know that there's 1, 2, 3, and then 4, I think is Revelation maybe. And then there's a 5th one called Chronicles. I'm not sure about those last 2. I kind of fell off the series after 3, which a lot of people did. That's why they started doing the reboots in later generations. But they're dirt cheap. I mean, a black label, I'm recommending Tomb Raider 2. I think it's a little bit more refined than the first one. Black label's about $7 loose, 13 complete. Green label is about $7 loose, 12 complete. And then they're all about the same for 1, 2, 3, and 4. And ironically, while looking for deals for this list, I actually found a copy of 2 that I ended up buying, because this one guy had games priced pretty good compared to what they go for. You can find a Medal of Honor for $6. So that's what I'm talking about. You can find some of these cheaper. And then another one you gotta have if you want a true stealth experience but still has some nice violence and a ninja aesthetic is Tenchu. Tenchu, Stealth Assassin, great game. Black label about 10 loose, 23 complete. Green label 11 loose, 23 complete, about the same. There is a sequel, it's a little bit more expensive, that's arguably better, but I still probably prefer this game to this sequel. This happened a lot in the PS1 era where the sequel is arguably better, but a little bit more bloated, a little bit less enjoyable because of what they added. So maybe if you start with it, it's good, but I think these are stripped down in a good way. So recommend this. Definitely hits that Metal Gear Solid vein while being its own thing, and it's much more of a stealth game in my opinion. Now, one thing to be aware of, if you are looking at some of these, like for instance Metal Gear Solid, there is a game called Metal Gear Solid VR Missions. This is not going to have the main game. This is actually DLC sort of that they made for a Japanese exclusive variant of Metal Gear Solid called like Recluse or something. You know how they did Subsistence, and all that? They did one of those for the original Metal Gear Solid, but instead of releasing it as a new version, they just released the added stuff, which are VR missions, which are fun. That lets you play as Ninja. I never played it. This was a copy I found at a thrift store. And then lastly, I didn't even look this one up. I'm just throwing it in here at the end. Army Men 3D, like a $5, $7 game complete. The Army Men games are really, really fun. I've talked about Sarge's Heroes in the past, but this was the game that started it, and I was thoroughly impressed with how fun this was. I even went out and bought Army Men when I was around 10 years old or 11 years old when I played this. So yeah, enjoyable. Now, like I know I haven't talked about any racing games. The prominent racing game everyone's going to talk about from this time was the Gran Turismo series. I don't enjoy these that much. Part of the reason these were so popular is because at the time they had such realistic looking graphics of cars that were out and about at the time. Not as much fun to play now. I know there are arcade racers like Need for Speed and things of that, or Ridge Racer. I just don't have any experience with them, so I can't recommend them. But yes, looking at all this, so if you add the bonuses in and add everything, you're looking at about $330 for the black label. You're looking at about $280 for the green label, or you're looking at about $200 loose if you just are doing that. So you add that $200 to the $200 investment for the hardware, you're looking at somewhere between $400 and a little over $500 for everything. And if you skip the bonus games, then knock off about $50 off each. All right. So yeah, like I said, about the same price you would pay for a PS5. And this is what I would recommend if you want to have a PS1 collection that's solid, great playing games, a good diversity of style of games, and HDTV ready. So let me know what you thought of this list. Let me know if you guys have recommendations for day one purchases. I know I didn't talk about the Crashes or the Spyros or things of that nature, and that's because I didn't really play them. It's ironically, this is pretty much most of my childhood collection. So it's fun to talk about it, and of course I'm going to recommend it because I have fond memories of the PS1, and these games are largely the reason why. Alright guys, well that's it for this week. It's been so nice getting a hold of you. As you remember, hit that like button, smash that subscribe button, put a comment, let me know how handsome or ugly I am. It's been so nice getting a hold of you. Take care.